that going? All right, I'm calling the council meeting for Tuesday, December 8th, 2020 to order. First, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, or in our case, say we could sit and the flag behind me. We'll start. I
pledge
allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty,
liberty and justice for all.
Right. All right, next order of business is the roll call. Mr. Antel,
Present.
Mr. Bartko,
Here.
Mrs. Miller. Okay, Mrs. Davis,
Present.
Mr. Fenn,
Present.
and Mr. Poliak.
Here.
Okay, so we have 5 out of 6 members present. Next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda as it is presented to this council. I need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented to this council. Do I have such a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Heather. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
Who's
All right,
second?
go ahead, Mrs.
Seconded.
Spling.
Me. Ron.
Ron Antel seconded.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Fenn,
Yes.
and Mr. Poliak.
Yes.
Okay. Tonight's agenda is approved. Mr. Poliak, do we have anyone who wants to speak in the open forum? I see Janet Miller's name just appeared here, so. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
All right, so Janet Miller is joining our meeting right now at 7:05.
Yep. If I could remind all the members of the public in attendance that if they would want to participate in the section of the open forum, if they'd go to the Q&A and go ahead and put in their name and address, we'll go ahead and have you recognized into the meeting.
Okay. So at this point,
No one is
no one
making
is
that
there,
request.
so let's move on, and if someone does show up there in the next little bit, let's move on to the motion we have for the evening, and that is a motion to approve the minutes from the Tuesday, November 10th, 2020 council meeting, and the Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 council meeting, making this one motion. So we need a motion to adopt or approve the minutes.
I so move.
Thank you, Rod. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Antel seconds. All right, are there any corrections or anything? I looked at them briefly. You have them attached in your packet there.
Mhm.
I didn't really see any changes, but I could have missed something. Is there anyone who has any questions on those minutes? I don't see any. So we have a motion by Mr. Fenn, a second by Mr. Antel. Roll call.
Mr. Fenn,
Yes.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
and Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to approve the minutes is carried by a 6-0 passage. All right. We'll go to the next order of business tonight, which is ordinances. First ordinance we have is ordinance 2020-12-27. It is an ordinance declaring the improvements to certain real property within the village to be a public purpose. describing the public improvements to be made to directly benefit such parcels, exempting such parcels, exempting such improvements from ad valorem real property taxation, requiring the owner of the improvements to make service payments in lieu of ad valorem real property taxes, and establishing a municipal improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of the service payments in lieu of ad valorem property taxes. All pursuant to sections 57,009.40.
Eliminate that 10, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's my fault.
I thought that was a little, a little long. Okay, so it's 5,709.40 and 5,709.42 and 5,709.43 of the revised code and declaring an emergency. So in order to discuss this, we must first have a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule. Could I have such a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I believe we're going to carry this over to multiple readings.
Okay,
We can certainly discuss it tonight, but I don't know that for purposes of we do not need to suspend the 3 reading rule. We are required, and we've given notice to the schools, but we should pass this in January.
okay. So that means this is the first time it's going to be read. It'll be read next week on the 17th for the second reading.
Correct.
Okay. So we don't even need,
We're happy to discuss it
suspend.
now, but this is the TIF that we were talking about previously for the Pure Development project.
okay. Are there questions on it?
Marshall, can I ask you one question?
Okay.
At the meeting on the 27th, you said Pure Developments was gonna develop this property, but who are they working for?
They have not publicly disclosed that at this point.
So we don't know who's going in there.
They have not publicly disclosed that.
Okay, I'm just you're asking for a TIF, but who are we giving this to? I mean,
No, we're not giving it to anybody. There will be absolutely no income that's given to any private party. This is enabled the village to make infrastructure improvements within the village based on the payments in lieu of taxes that whoever the landowner is ultimately going to be will be required to make.
okay, well,
So the only people that are gonna get money as a result of this are going to be the schools, which are going to be made 100% whole
right.
out of this project, and then the village will receive additional funds that will be sufficient to cover the infrastructure requirements or needs of the village that are going to have a nexus to this project and to this development.
Well, this thing is like 26 pages long. So and it's all legal stuff. And what I'm understanding is whether they get the TIF or not, Marshall, Hudson Schools will get their money.
100%.
100%.
100%.
Whether they get the TIF or not.
Yeah, I think it's on the last page of the ordinance, of the resolution. I think it's the ordinance. It's the last page of the ordinance or the second to last page of the ordinance. It's right at the top.
Okay. Like I said, this
And
thing
the
is
schools have already, as Marshall said,
and it's
been
all
informed.
legal.
It's 100% legal. It's something
It's hard
that's
for Bill Gotze just to read this ordinance.
so the ordinance is very similar to the one that we passed previously in form. The substantive result here is a little different in that there is no private partner in this particular project. When we granted a TIF previously, we reallocated the property taxes and gave a portion back to the developer for purposes of their infrastructure costs. Here, we are reallocating property tax payments, and they are essentially being allocated, for the lack of a better phrase, and frankly to oversimplify, allocated away from the county to the village so that we can make infrastructure improvements within the village that are related to this project.
Marshall, from what I'm reading, it's for the next 30 years.
That's correct.
That's a long time.
Well, I would anticipate that over time there will be wear and tear on property in the roads that are around this particular site. Site roads will need to be redeveloped, repaved, redesigned, all of those kinds of things. And as time goes on, I mean, there's a number of items and a number of projects that have been identified by the village administration and council leadership already that will be funded through this TIF that have a nexus to the project. So it's all good news for the village.
And Mr. Barco, if I could,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, there's a lot of exhibits on there. I believe that the ordinance is about 4 pages, but there's a lot of different exhibits and attachments, and we could go through it again at finance if you need to next week. We're gonna take this to 3 readings, so there's plenty of time to be able to ask questions, do your homework, go through, get all the details, and be very comfortable with what is laid out there and how it benefits the village.
Yeah, please take time to read it. If you have any questions, call me. Happy to go through and answer any of the questions. We'll go through line by line if you like, and I'll explain to you what each item means and how it can benefit the village.
And Marshall, it might make sense. I mean, most of the communities use the 30-year marker around these TIFs. It might be helpful for us to just be able to speak on that next week.
It's very, very commonplace.
So 30 years is a standard, Don?
I didn't say it's a standard. I said it's very common. It's very common that a lot of the communities around us use a 30-year TIF. Yes, it is common.
I would be interested to know, and maybe everyone can think about this as well, what would be the downside to doing this? I think that would be a relevant question for anybody. I have not been able to identify one. I thought about that long and hard. I haven't seen any downside to creating a TIF on this particular project and on this parcel. And all I see from where I'm sitting is positive, good benefit for the village. If the village doesn't pass this ordinance, essentially the tax dollars that go to the county. This is essentially a redirection of the tax. Taxes are going to be paid by the developer one way or the other. And so, we can redirect this money to the village and we can use it for infrastructure, or we can give it to the county. I mean, that's really our choice.
And I believe that this group is going to have better oversight on how that will how those tax dollars can benefit our community. I am definitely in favor.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Are there any other questions from this council? If not, this is the first reading. We'll go next week to a second reading on this ordinance 2020-12-27.
Can I just make a suggestion, Mayor?
Yes,
It's Janet. That if, the questions that I had have been answered by you gentlemen just now discussing what you discussed. However, in the event, like with Mr. Barco, that there are other concerns or questions, that we please take them into consideration at the second reading. And we continue to give this as much scrutiny as we can. So I respect Mr. Barco's questions, and I hope he got his answers. If not, I think that he for sure needs to be bringing these up for the second reading. So,
And I would
and
invite
that
anyone to
goes-
call me. I would invite anyone to
I was-
call me ahead of time.
To understand.
right. And I just think that goes for all of us. But I'm grateful that we're having more than one reading on this. So, thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that they feel free to ask any questions that they want.
All right.
So,
moving
going
on to
forward,
ordinance-
sorry.
Moving on to ordinance 2020-12-28. It is an ordinance suspending deposits to the Special Revenue and Reserve Fund under RC 5705.12B and declaring an emergency. In order to discuss this, we need a motion to suspend the three reading rule.
Mr. Antel made a motion.
I'll make a motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fenn. Roll call, Betty.
Yes, Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mr. Fenn,
Yes.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
and Mr. Bartko.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. In order to discuss this, we need a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-12-28.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Fenn. All right. Who can best
Would you like me
describe
to
this?
explain
Mrs.
this?
Klingenberg?
Okay. This is an ordinance in which we set up a special revenue reserve fund for people who retire. And we did that. We've used it. However, right now, because of COVID, I have asked that we pass to just to stop doing that for the time being until we have a better handle on what's happening next year for the funds. So that is the purpose. Oh, we're not getting rid of the fund. We're just suspending it. It is a 5-year fund through 2023. At the end of this next year, we can start back up, no problem. But I'm just asking that we kind of take it and consider it part of our budget for the coming year.
So this would be just a 1-year suspension.
It's a temporary one. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say 1 year.
Got it.
Hopefully by the end of next year, there's no more COVID.
Yeah.
But yes, you're
Yeah.
right. It is in a sense looking at it from 1 year, but it is a temporary suspension of funds.
Okay.
And I also looked at our employees, and there's nobody right now that is suspecting to be retiring with any large amount. So we have a little giveaway there,
Hmm.
Hey, Betty, how much is in the fund currently?
about 40-some thousand, I think. I have forgotten, but it's about 40-some thousand.
Right.
And that'll just stay there. That's not going to go anywhere.
Is this a 1-year suspension, or is it?
Hopefully, it's not going to be any longer than that. We don't know what COVID's going to do. I'm just trying to look into the future a little bit and make sure that we're okay for a while. And no, but I've kind of looked around, and except for possibly me and perhaps a road department employee, a couple of them, there's nobody that's really planning on retiring.
Mrs. Klingenberg, when we talked about this could also be open-ended to say that by September of 2021, if the COVID is all, and we look like we're on a good basis, we could bring forward another ordinance in order to put this back on, to start collecting for this fund, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, would it make sense for us to just in section 1 say that effective January 1st, 2021, that the requirement that the fiscal officer transfer or place up to $15,000 annually into the village's special revenue and reserve fund under Revised Code 5705.13B is suspended. And then as an amendment for the fiscal year 2021.
And I hope we don't need it. I don't know what guarantee we have, but that's up to you as council.
It just depends on council. I mean, that would require us then to almost like in our yearly maintenance on some of these, then if we needed to do it again next year, we'd have to pass another suspension on it.
Oh, okay, that's your intention? Okay.
Who made the motion to adopt?
The motion was made by Mrs. Miller, seconded by Mr. Fenn.
Mrs. Miller, can I propose an amendment in section 1 to add after the first sentence for the fiscal year of 2021?
Yes.
Okay, so we're just eliminating 2022 from there, correct? What you're proposing,
I didn't hear you, Mayor.
you're just taking off the words for the calendar years 2021 and then taking off or 2022.
Right, we're not going.
And that's good with Mrs. Miller's first. Is that good with your second, Mr. Fenn?
Yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you, Don.
Hmm.
All right. So we first need to, we have to change the ordinance first, and we have to have a vote on this.
Yes.
Okay.
We're-
So,
we need a
this
vote on the
vote-
change.
This vote is to
The amendment.
the amendment, which is to eliminate the words or 2022. We have a roll call vote on that? Or do we need, all right, so are we going with the same motion and second? Janet, are you good with the?
Yes. Do you want me to make would you like me to
Right.
make an additional motion to adopt this as amended?
To vote on the amendment?
Yes, we're voting on the amendment. So Janet is making that motion to vote on the amendment, and Ron Fenn is
You're
agreeing with
seconding.
the second. All right, so we have that. Go ahead, Mrs. Klingenberg.
Okay. Mr. Rantel,
Yes.
Mr. Fenn,
Yes,
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
and Mr. Poliak.
Yes.
Okay, the amendment passed. We'll now go to the original motion, which was made by Mrs. Miller, seconded by Mr. Fenn. Klingenberg.
Roll call, Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Fenn,
yes,
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
and Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
All right, this becomes ordinance 2020-12-28. Ordinance 2020-12-29 is an ordinance retroactively declaring an emergency during the current COVID-19 crisis. First, in order to consider this, we need to suspend the three.
I'll make a
reading
motion to
rule.
suspend the rules.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Bob. All right, we have a motion and a second. Mrs. Klingberg, roll call.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mr. Fenn,
yes,
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
and Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to suspend has passed. We now ask for a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-12-29.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Okay. Did you get that, Mrs.? Okay. Do we have any discussion on this? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion and second. The roll call, please.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
and Mr. Finn.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes, becomes ordinance 2020-12-29. Next ordinance we have is ordinance 2020-12-31, an ordinance authorizing and directing fiscal officer to transfer money to the OPWC fund effective retroactively and declaring an emergency. Need a motion to suspend the three reading rule.
No, I so
Make-
move.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Poyak. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Finn,
Yes.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Is this ordinance 20-12-29? I thought we just passed that.
This is 31.
31.
31?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Antel?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. The motion to suspend has passed. And I'm now asking for a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-12-31.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr. Antel.
I'll second with discussion if necessary.
Okay,
Anyone have any questions?
are there questions on this?
I can explain if you'd like.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Okay. The funds that carry money from the Ohio Public Works Commission are allowed to go into the negative because it is a reimbursement that we get. However, because of COVID, we have been in a little too long, and I'm not comfortable having to go into a second year with a negative balance, even though we're going to get the money, but OPWC is not sending out checks or anything. They won't be doing that till sometime next year. So I'm asking to take money from the general fund and make that fund 2061 whole. And that way it'll save us, it'll keep us out of trouble, so to speak, and it makes me feel better. Did I make any sense?
And may I add further that the money that you're going to be taking from there will be replaced once OPWC cuts us the check, correct?
Right, it'll be
They'll be placed in the general
deposited
fund.
directly into the general fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be better, yes.
Okay. Other questions?
Is,
Do they have to agree to how much money it is?
I'm sorry, Bob.
If you're taking the money out of the general fund, does the, Ohio have to agree with that?
No, it's what it is that we pay for things and then we get reimbursed. So,
Okay.
but because of the COVID, OPWC is
Right,
not
they're-
sending us
they're
any
not
money.
handing any money out.
So we will get the money, but I'm uncomfortable going into a second year with a negative balance. So I want to make that fund whole. And
should it be in the ordinance that when that check comes in, it will reimburse the general fund?
yes, it will automatically reimburse the general fund, correct. It actually will go into the general fund.
That money goes in the general fund when it comes, and then she disperses
Right.
it
'cause
Right.
to that fund anyway.
So, right, so is Mr. Poliak asking for that to be part of the language of the legislation?
I think it automatically goes in the general fund
Yeah.
regardless.
So you're fine either way.
Yeah.
And I have a question about the amount. Are we, what I don't have it in front of me, so is there an amount that we're looking at, or is it a?
It was 110,000. I don't
Okay.
remember the
It's
figures. But,
$112,492.83.
and 112,000, right. And I'm not comfortable with that, so it's just
And I
too
can-
much to be in a negative.
It is a lot. I agree.
So
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion made by Mr. Antel, seconded by Mrs. Miller. Roll call.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
and Mr. Finn.
Yes.
All right. Ordinance passes, becomes ordinance 2020-12-31. We next move on to the final ordinance of the evening, ordinance 2020, little typo there, -12-32. An ordinance authorizing submission of PILT proportionate grant application and declaring an emergency. In order to discuss this, we need a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule.
I'll make a motion to suspend it.
Thank you, Mr. Barco. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. This is-
Mr. Bartko,
Yes?
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Finn,
Yes.
and Mr. Poliak.
Yes.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule has passed. We'll now ask for a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-12-32.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Thank you.
I'll
Do we have a
second. I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Antel. All right, is there any discussion on this, or do everyone know what this is?
To refresh your memory, we usually get this in August. And I've called a couple of times because we never got it. It's about $1,800. This is money in lieu of tax dollars when the park bought land. So I'm just telling you, this is very late this year, but it is legitimate. And I've been told we'll get our $1,800 pretty soon, quote unquote.
Well,
It's in the mail.
with the COVID, they've had some balancing act down in the county, so. But Mrs. Klingenberg has been pursuing this because by the end of the year, we want to know where that money is. Because years ago, we found that a lot of communities were not getting this built money, so we wanted to track this down and find out it was being kept at the county for various needs that the county had, but it was supposed to be distributed proportionally to all the communities. So that's what this is, what this money is. So we have a motion made by Mrs. Davis, seconded by Mr. Antel. Roll call.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes?
Mr. Finn,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
and Mr. Poliak.
Yes.
All right. Ordinance passes, becomes ordinance 2020-12-32. We have one resolution this evening. That is resolution 2020-12-50. A resolution retroactively approving the permanent annual appropriations number 4 and declaring an emergency. Need a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule.
I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Fenn. Second.
I will second.
Thank you, Heather. Roll call.
Mr. Finn,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bartko,
Yes.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
and Mr. Poliak.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to suspend has passed. Now need a motion to adopt resolution 2020-12-50. We have that motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Poliak. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Antel, seconds. Any discussion?
This is permanent appropriations number 4. Now, if you recall, in January, end of January, we'll have one more because that's when the books close and everything balances out. So this is the fourth one, and we will have one more coming up for 220.
Okay. Seeing no questions, we have a motion made by Mr. Poliak, seconded by Mr. Antel. Roll call, please.
Mr. Poliak,
Yes.
Mr. Antel,
Yes.
Mr. Fenn,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
and Mr. Bartko.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes, becomes resolution 2020-12-50.
Mr. Mayor,
Mayor's report.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just for a point of clarification, because we were talking about that reserve account a little bit earlier and we just passed
Okay.
the appropriation. I just wanted to point out in that fund, there's $41,317. We talked about that earlier, but there's still a healthy amount of money to start to protect those retirements.
Thank
Right.
you, Mr. Poliak.
Correct. Thank you, Don, for researching that. We knew it was there in the minute. Everyone had it probably. All right. Summit County Board of Election sent us a letter saying that they were going to provide $250 to clean the building after the election was held here. So we called Service Masters, who we had clean the building in the spring thoroughly, disinfect it, and they will be here on Thursday. Our Congress is being urged to extend the CARES Act. And I think most of you are aware of that. That has been brought forward in all the county meetings and that they're saying. Of course, it's been on the news, so I'm not telling you anything that's new. We still have people that are affected by this virus and their jobs and that. Summit County has certified the election results on the fire levy. There were a total of 901 votes. 673 of those were for the tax levy. 228 were against the tax levy. That was a very good margin of passage. We received a thank you note from Carol Fenn,
While you're
one of our
talking,
cemetery
here it is.
trustees and our illustrious,
Can you see the thank you note?
oh,
Aw,
This was made by Mrs. Fenn.
it's original art.
Yes, it is.
all right.
And
Yep.
if you don't mind, I will read it real quick.
Okay.
Because I've never had, I think this is nice. On a dark and gloomy day after a morning of therapy, I was tired and stiff. A bright and beautiful flower arrangement appeared at our door. With what a surprise. Thank you so much. It was greatly appreciated. And this was signed from you as a council and the mayor.
Right.
Thank you, people. She really
And Carol is doing as well as expected, correct?
driving me nuts. I am her personal chauffeur, and she even allows me to drive her car.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's something. I
that's something.
now wait a minute. Does it have heated and heated
Yes.
seats? Oh, and steering
Yes.
wheel and all that. Okay, good.
Automatic
Right.
start too. Remote.
Um, just to let all of you know, Ted Chandler had a procedure. He's on our board of
He's
zoning
here.
appeals, and he's doing fine. I talked with him today. He has to have another procedure, but we'll keep track of them, and he has agreed to next meeting. I will be reappointing him to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So, newsletter, working on that. Once we get the envelopes done up in that, we'll be getting the newsletter out end of this week, beginning of next week, has all the updates for the residents in the village. December 2nd, we had a meeting, most of you are aware of the nuisance abatement board on the Norwood end, and we were proceeding ahead. And as action goes on there, we will be informing you of what's going on with that. Just wanted to say that we
I
have
don't know
that.
if you
Marshall,
or,
do you have any news?
no, I just didn't know if you or Mr. Poliak wanted to present a quick summary. I don't know if everybody knows what happened and what was going on.
No.
The nuisance abatement board made a determination that the state of the property was a public
The
nuisance.
Norwood Inn.
The Norwood Inn, right.
What did I say?
You did, I don't think we said it.
Okay, yeah, the Norwood Inn property was deemed to be a public nuisance. And there was an agreement and an expectation of timeline on abating the issues. And basically there's about a 45-day period that is to rectify the nuisance problems of the property.
Correct, so we'll keep you informed if,
Yeah, the nuisance board passed a motion that said that the owner had 15 days to submit a written plan to fix each item that it was going to, that needed to be abated, which was everything that was listed in all of the reports, or come with a plan to demolish the building. They have 45 days from the date of the order, their receipt of the order, to complete all of those items that are on the plan. They are entitled to additional time if the plan that they submit is for repair and rehabilitation. If the plan is for demolition, they are not entitled to an extension. So,
And if I could add, this was at the nuisance abatement board meeting. It was a great example of a lot of our the police chief, fire chief, our engineering team, our legal team. It was a great collaborative effort of everybody coming together for what's good to our community. And it really the resolution plan, I think, was a really good collaboration, and it's a really good plan, and it was very thorough and detailed for what needs to happen.
thank you. If they fail to meet the plan, if they fail to meet their deadline, the 45-day deadline, the village is, according to the nuisance abatement board and our codified ordinances, authorized to proceed to demolish the building, and we can tax the cost against the property as a lien. We have to give them 30 days notice. I wouldn't envision that happening until sometime, next summer, but we're working on other ways to try to find funding for something like that. But if it comes to that, hopefully it won't. Hopefully they'll get it abated. The ball is now in their court to try to come up with a plan.
correct.
So thank you.
Thank you, Don and Marshall.
I have a question. It's
Okay.
Janet. I have a question. Is that nuisance, is that report available publicly?
So it was there hasn't been a report yet. What happened is at the end of the board meeting, there was a motion that was passed, several motions that were passed. One was the finding of the nuisance. Essentially, the landowner actually virtually stipulated and agreed to all of the evidence and said, yes, it's pretty much a public nuisance. And then there was a second motion that was the order, which is what I just laid out for you. I believe the order has been finalized. I don't think all 4 of the board members of the nuisance abatement board have signed it yet. Once it gets signed, then we can release it, because then it'll be final. But it's not right.
Not
It's not.
final.
It's just much like a court order, right? They're not final until all of the judges would sign it.
And the first signature got on it tonight, and I think the mayor will be able to get all the rest of those signatures probably within the next day or so.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully, we'll see.
Then we will have it available at Village Hall. Okay, other questions? That's all the presentation that I have. I will now present our fiscal officer to give us her report, if she has anything.
I only have 2 items. The mayor's covered everything else very well. I just want to again tell you about the council meetings for the year 2021. Make sure that you keep them, record them, whatever it takes, so that you have them. And the other item is kind of, I think, a nice, good thing to do. And because this COVID is kind of depressing, Medical Mutual gave us a discount on our December premium. And as a result of giving us a discount, we passed it on to those employees who have our insurance and are paying their percentage contribution. So that will be taken off for 2 payrolls. They will not have to pay that. It will not be deducted any for 2 pays. So what we did was try to give them an early Christmas present, but to share in what Medical Mutual did for us as a whole. And I sent you that copy, that memo, but I just wanted to reiterate it.
Okay,
I'm done.
thank you, Mrs. Klingenberg. All right, moving on to committee reports. Safety Committee, Valley Fire District, anything to report?
Nothing big changes. All the reports are in line and everything. I don't know if Ron or Heather have anything.
No,
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Roads Committee, Cemetery Trustees.
but the cemetery's quiet. The road guys are doing what they're supposed to. We had one semi-bad storm, but they got through it really nice. Roads are very clear. They did a good job.
Now we've got, Mr. Fenn, I will be showing you one tree that's by the Garden of Angels. No, I'm sorry. The one that's by our tribute to the fallen officer out here
Mhm.
is hollow on the inside, and we've had a big branch fall off of it that's been cleaned up, but we need to look at that. We may need to have that removed.
Yeah, okay, well.
It doesn't
I'll be
fall
up
on
front.
the,
We'll take a look at it.
so it doesn't fall on the,
Yeah, we gotta get that, yeah. All of those trees on that row are old silver maples and they're coming to the point, yeah.
right. Okay, just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We cleaned that up a little while ago. All right, lands and buildings, anything to report, Janet?
I have nothing to report. Nothing on economic development either. Same.
Okay. Planning Commission, BZA,
I did not meet last week.
Right.
No report.
okay. And we have our engineer with us this evening who's recuperating at home. Do you have anything to report, Brian?
So I want to touch upon, so Arthur Schmidt, our zoning inspector, gave a report in November, and we discussed that he's going to start giving a monthly report to us, so I can provide that to council, so everyone knows what's sort of going on in the village regards to zoning violations. So I just want to run through currently what's going as of it was November 20th for this report. 102. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Appearance of broken down car on properties being monitored. 256 West Hines Hill Road. Home maintenance being monitored. 6321 Chittenden Road. Cars parked in public right of way. Compliance date was December 4th. That they would have to be in compliance. 6082 Old 8 Road. Business maintenance fence. Compliance date is on December 11th. And 668 East Hines Hill Road, site plan review, penalty in progress. And then violation resolutions in progress, 82 Grandview Road, violation of the nuisance. They are currently at Summit County Court of Common police case. The Norwood Inn, we just had that nuisance abatement hearing last week, so I don't need to discuss that anymore. 115 Boston Mills Road, junk and machinery and property. Property owners continuing the removal of that junk and machinery. 5818 Akron Cleveland Road, home maintenance, monitoring the property. And 7588 Brandywine Road, again, junk and progress has been made, additional cleanup still necessary. And then we've resolved some violations, 7622 Old 8, 6898 Old 8, and I apologize, I'm not sure what they were. So I'll make sure Arthur puts those in, what the violations were that was resolved. 6337 Chittenden Road, and 6321 Chittenden Road, and 66 Beverly Road. Just there's some zoning inspector, just some quick notes. 106 Beverly, the home was caught on fire, is currently going through the demolition and cleanup process as of November 20th. If people weren't aware of what that had happened. So that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up. Real quick, my engineer's report. So we will be, Brandywine Phase 1 just went out to the utility companies for review. The gas line will have to be relocated as part of this project, and we've notified Dominion Energy about that. We are hoping, again, we will be bidding out this project. The intent is in January of 21. So as of right now. And then also we'll discuss a 2021 pavement maintenance program. Just we've noticed, you know, on even on Old Egg, surprisingly, you know, Phase 2, which is was, you know, paved almost 3 coming up on 4 years ago already. So we want to keep an eye on doing crack sealing and just keeping up with maintenance. So we had a large maintenance program in 19, but we want to try at least every couple of years, just be a small one where we go to the village, do performing some crack sealing, any pavement repairs and such. So we will be coming up with a proposal to do that investigation, to do a very small pavement maintenance program, somewhere probably about 20 or 30,000. That way we keep up with the village and with everything like that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. You know, the maintenance of our roadways are important to keep current with them. If we can do the crack sealing, we prolong the life and longevity of having to resurface them. So that's why I've been pushing our engineers to take a look at that and let us know and keep us apprised of that. And Brian is that's great. All right. Do anyone have any old business? So we have a reminder that next week we have the council finance meeting, and that is on the 15th. I might have mistakenly said the 17th earlier this evening, so I stand corrected. And the council meeting, organizational meeting, as you know, has to be within the first week or so of the new year, and that is scheduled for 1/5 of 2021. Sure that. New business. Anything? I have no indication that we need an executive session, so I'd ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Antel. Have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. We don't want to do a roll call, or we just want to do a show of hands?
We haven't done roll call in a long time.
I know. Well, I'm asking this evening. We could change, but
Okay.
let's have a show of hands. All those we stand adjourned, raise your hand.
Okay, that's us.
Okay, so we have all council 6-0 to adjourn at, I have 7:55.
Ooh, good time.
All right, good night.
Everyone.
All right,
Thank you,
good night, everybody.
everyone.
Mayor,
Nice
I'm gonna
meeting.
move the host
Yep,
back over to you.
And we have another meeting, and that one will be our wish to everyone for a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Bring your cocoa and cookies.
There you go.
Whatever.
Get all remotely.
Remote, yeah. Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. Are you trained?
Good night, everybody. It was so nice to be with you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.